Alright, so today's video I'm going to hopefully answer the questions that I've been getting about how I decide what stocks to invest in. Um, I can't tell you guys what to buy, but I can talk about what I look for and how I make that decision. So today we're going to use Verizon as an example. I will be covering technical analysis at the end for that question, but right off the bat, we're just going to use Simply Safe here because Verizon on Robinhood, they just don't give enough information. Robinhood in general, I just don't think that is what they are good at, but that's not the point of using Robinhood. You use it for simplicity. So I do my research elsewhere, and Simply Safe is how I do that. So first thing we look at, dividend yield, so 4.33%. We're just going to take note of that. I don't want to talk about it too much because my last video should have explained why high dividend yields are bad and lower ones are better. This one's a little high, but we'll just take note of that and move on. So according to Simply Safe, 87 is their score for Verizon, and they're saying that the dividend is very safe. So that's good to know. Let's keep moving on and see maybe why that is. So dividend growth is a huge factor. So in regards to the next 10 companies that I am investing in, I want to see dividend growth. It'll help basically grow my portfolio because the dividend is growing over time. That means I'm getting paid more and more for each stock I buy. On top of that, I am buying more and more stocks, so it just compounds more and more as the time goes on. So that is something we're looking for. They've only had 2% growth, but if you ask me, as long as the dividend is growing, that's pretty much what I'm looking for. So 13 years of dividend growth and uninterrupted growth for 29 years. So that's pretty impressive. Let's move on here. So in regards to financials, I don't know everything down here and what it all is talking about. So I'm just going to talk about basically what you can follow and make a somewhat educated decision on whether or not the dividend is sustainable. So earnings payout ratio is one of the first ones I look at. Simply Safe's recommendation for this sector is below 70%, which Verizon is at 50%. So basically percentage of dividends or percentage of earnings paid out as a dividend. Is the dividend expensive for the company or not so much? So looks like it's fine there. The next thing I look at is sales growth and total sales. So basically, if a dividend is growing over time and the sales are going down, that's a bad sign. You don't want to see that because eventually their dividend's going to have to get cut or something if they don't turn that around, because if we're paying more and more money but we're making less and less money, you see how that doesn't work. So that's what we look for, is growth, and it looks like that's pretty much what we've got here. Is their total sales have been growing for quite some time. My guess is telecommunications is going to level off a little bit, but should be pretty safe in that regards because, again, it's kind of like a utility. They get monthly income from people paying their bills and whatnot, so I think that's okay. And that's pretty much all I look at for financials. I mean, you can really get in here and look at return on equity, return on invested capital, and whatnot if you really want to, but I like to keep things simple and make educated decisions, but without, spending hours and hours looking at everything. So those are the things I look at in regards to financials. So the next thing I look at is longevity. So do I think Verizon is going to be around? The reason why is, we want to keep taking advantage of growing dividends, so we want the company to stick around. And that way, hopefully, the stock price also goes up over time. So a company like Verizon, I think they will be around, so that checks my box there. I think telecommunications, and especially Verizon, will be around for at least another 5, 10, maybe even longer. So checks that box. Moving on, diversification. So this is in regards to the overall portfolio. Do I think adding Verizon is going to help diversify? In a nutshell, you want your portfolio to have several slivers of a diversified pie, just because, let's say real estate gets hit really hard, well, then hopefully Verizon would help kind of offset that at the time of that happening. So yes, Verizon would be a good addition to my portfolio in regards to diversification. So that answers that. And then the last question is, do I understand the business? This is important. We could look at all these numbers and make a decision off of that, but if I don't understand what this company does, can I really answer the question on whether or not I think they're going to be around? Probably not. So that's why that question is important to me. I don't like to invest in things I don't understand, at least to some degree. Obviously, some of the REITs I invest in, I understand in general what they do, and that's just good enough for me, just to have a general understanding. You don't need to know everything they spend their money on and all of that to make an educated decision, but you should at least have somewhat of an idea. So that's pretty much it for fundamentals. So the last thing I will talk about is technical analysis. Typically you use this if you're a trader. You can use technical analysis to try to buy the dip, but I don't really do that anymore. I'm dollar cost averaging, which is a proven strategy. So anyways, we'll just talk about it real quick. So this is TD Ameritrade's Think or Swim platform. It is free if you want to look at charting like this, but in a nutshell, you can use indicators, which is what we have down here, to see whether or not a stock is oversold or overbought and make a decision off of that. So I just figured I would talk about it real briefly in this video because it is a way to decide whether or not to buy a stock. So if you are looking for more information on that, it's probably not going to happen on this channel because I'm not doing day trading or even swing trading really. So if you're looking for that, check out Ricky Gutierrez. He is a day trader and can explain to you how to set all this up and that kind of thing. So go check him out if you're curious about that. But going back to the portfolio here, so that's in a nutshell how I choose my stocks. I like to invest in companies I understand. Are they moving in the right direction? Our next 10 stocks, we want to be safe companies because I have a lot of speculative investments here. EPR actually just cut their dividend completely. So the next 10 companies I invest in for the long-term portfolio need to be safe because, again, we started off in sketchy companies to create cash flow, which is totally fine. 8 of the 10 are still paying, and I do think EPR will come back and pay, but that's pretty much it for how I buy stocks. I like to keep it pretty simple and whatnot. So before I end the video, I do want to say, I mentioned it in my last video, but I'll talk about it again. I'm thinking maybe once a week I will let you guys choose a company that I probably don't have to maybe talk about. So let's say it's upvoted as AT&T, so that's the one for the week. We'll just go through like we did today, probably a little bit faster, and talk about maybe whether or not I would invest in it. I can't tell you whether or not you should invest in it, but just something I'm thinking about doing. So if that's something you want to see, let me know. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. So if you made it this far and thought this was useful, consider subscribing for more content. My next video that I'm going to be uploading today will be the weekly update video on Robinhood. So look for that, and I will hopefully see you in the next one.